Hi, my name is Ginny, also known as Two-Thirds Lotus, and this clip is part of my series analyzing the Essential Bukowski, edited by Abel DeBrito. Nothing has been edited out, so you're seeing this exactly as it was streamed on Twitch, with all the imperfections and tangents of a live stream. If you want to learn more or catch me live, make sure to check out the description, otherwise enjoy the incredible work of Charles Bukowski.
I Met a Genius by Charles Bukowski. I met a genius on the train today. About 6 years old. He sat beside me, and as the train ran down along the coast, we came to the ocean. And then he looked at me and said, "It's not pretty." It was the first time I had realized that. I Met a Genius by Charles Bukowski. A fun, short little poem, since I'm, I guess, slightly mentally worn out. Kind of, often. We'll see how much we can pull from it in terms of interpretation. Yeah, it's funny. It's a good little poem. I wonder how much there is to analyze here. But we'll try. We'll throw the pens at it. We'll throw the colors, the symbols, the whatever. But first I'll read it again. I Met a Genius by Charles Bukowski. I met a genius on the train today. About 6 years old. He sat beside me, and as the train ran down along the coast, we came to the ocean. And then he looked at me and said, "It's not pretty." It was the first time I'd realized that. I met a genius. I'm hearing the simplicity of innocence and just speaking the thought kind of thing. Most of us might hide that observation. Okay, I like that. Let's write that down. The simplicity of innocence, you say, author Brian Liu. Simplicity of innocence. And just speaking the thought kind of thing. Most of us might hide that observation. We might hide that observation. Totally can't analyze. Cough. Yeah. My client has dived into a Stephen Fry video on YouTube, and I can turn my attention. Perfect. So, why might you hide that observation? Why might someone hide the observation that the sea is not pretty? Why might a not innocent person, an adult, a Bukowski, hide this, not realize this? Thoughts? I think mostly just for fear of judgment. We spend a lot of time doing this as people, fearing judgment. And like you say, Brian Liu, the simplicity of innocence. kids, I think one of the most beautiful things about them is that they don't really care about being judged. Kids will like do whatever, they'll play in the mud, they'll be silly, they'll make faces, and they don't fear judgment. Which is something almost certainly lost as we age and as, I don't know, we become graying alcoholics like Bukowski. Well, either because we start to find beauty in things later, okay, or because we start to keep it to ourselves because we're taught not to talk to strangers, that as well, okay. Just not making conversation. So we're starting to get like multiple interpretations. Conversation. Most would rather just keep to themselves. And we start to find beauty in things later. Okay. And why? Why would we find beauty in things as we age? I think maybe I have an idea. One just being that there's some societal connection. Bukowski is probably conditioned. I think we're all conditioned to see the sea as beautiful. And yet this kid maybe doesn't have that conditioning, and thus allows it to just be not pretty. Also, welcome in Annie, Elma, AE. What's up, cutie patootie? That's me. Societal. So there might be some societal pressure we have. So many people talk about the beauty of the ocean and how serene and blue and endless and freedom, all of these things. We build up these associations and all that. I mean, I'm just throwing wet toilet paper at the wall and seeing if it sticks. That's fine, author Ryan Lee. That's kind of what I am asking for people to do when I ask in chat. I think that's like the best way to analyze. We're so not confident about the things we'll throw at the wall in analysis, but you have to throw something so that you can get anywhere in trying to understand what this might be saying. Well, as our minds become more complex, so do our opinions on what we find pretty. Something we find gross in younger years can become something we enjoy later. Yeah. So there is this maybe change that happens as we age. And this is actually something that Bukowski talks about like quite a bit. Like age and the way that we change over time. This is like a big theme of Bukowski's with his aging and thinking about, like how he's just marching toward death. And Bukowski in other poems also kind of describes children as very intelligent or seeing the world in a different way, the 6-year-old. But implying the kid is a genius for keeping it simple is also really cool. Oh! You just said a thing. Keep it simple. Stupid. That's like a acronym that we use. KISS. Sometimes we overcomplicate things and people say like the best way that you can go through is just keep it simple. You don't need to overcomplicate things, think too hard. Be an analyst of poetry and make everything about more than it's actually about, like myself. Just keep it simple. And maybe the kid is a genius for that. Maybe the genius is the person who looks at this poem and says, it's not pretty. I don't like it. That's all. A simplicity. Straightforwardness. Simplicity. Liking the things you like, not liking the things you don't like. Why does there need to be justification? I'm like calling myself out here, which is fun. Why must beauty be justified. This is like what I do. Maybe I don't. But, people will say, I like this thing. And usually in chat I'll ask, why do you like it? Say why you like it. And maybe there's some amount of practicality to saying why, communicating why we like things in like an artistic sense. I like this about your poem, and I can communicate with that, communicate that to you to help you change your poem in a way that's either good or bad to, your tastes. Feedback. But looking at the sea, there's not really a reason to need to justify. I don't like the look of the sea. I don't find it aesthetically pleasing. Same with a tree or a mountain. Like, why does that matter? Now, maybe there's some larger symbol to the sea and the ocean and the coast. We do this. We could decide intentionally to not keep it simple. And say, is there a symbol here? I don't think there is. I don't like that as an interpretation. I like the simplicity. It's a short poem. I met a genius. What does the sea, the ocean symbolize, though? Lots of things. Notably, this is the Pacific Ocean. This is the coast off of California. The Golden Coast. The West Coast. But in general, the ocean is a symbol for a lot of things. A lot of different meanings. One big one that I think of personally is like freedom. There's also like a danger to the ocean. There is a mystery, the unknown, which is what makes it alluring to some people. These kinds of ideas of a vastness and unknown. And maybe that specifically reinforces the simplicity of the child. The child doesn't care for deeper symbolic meanings of the sea. The child maybe doesn't understand the vastness and mystique of the ocean, but is happy to just not like how it looks. I mean, the kid doesn't say, I don't like the sea. He says very specifically, it's not pretty. And pretty tends to be like a visual thing. I think Bukowski would probably scorn someone like me. I don't think Bukowski would appreciate the person deeply analyzing the poem and trying to break it down and maybe feel more or understand more than what it is saying. And I think the kid is the opposite of myself, so to speak. The kid does not need to justify. The kid does not need to analyze the ocean as a symbol like I do. I've walked myself into this trap. Walked right into it and fallen face first. I even said, what's the symbol of the ocean? The kid doesn't care. The kid sees something and it's good or it's bad. It's pretty or it's not pretty. Kids are like pretty simple creatures when they're kids. We get less simple. An interesting thing for Bukowski, it was the first time I'd realized that. So first of all, it sounds like Bukowski agrees. Because if he realized that, he either agrees or he agrees that it could be, like, not pretty. So maybe he agrees, maybe he doesn't. But regardless, I do think this speaks to... You don't know what to think about that bit? I think I maybe do. So we mentioned age and change and all of this. And I think it maybe shows, a disconnect between Bukowski, at least before realizing that, and the child, where the child is able to think and understand in a way that Bukowski is not. And Bukowski maybe learns from this kid who is a genius. A genius is probably smarter than Bukowski. Bukowski did not consider himself a genius, which makes this kid sort of like an authority on the subject if we frame him as a genius. Smarter than Bukowski. More understanding. And so Bukowski, in his sort of, maybe just growing up and being less simple and needing to have justification for the things he feels and thinks and does, becoming like grown up and not childlike. There's something so much more beautiful, so much more genius about just looking at the world, speaking your mind, right? Maybe when you wouldn't normally talk to someone, without judgment, self-judgment, judgment of others, and just saying, yeah, it's not pretty. Not interested. Drowning Devil, hello. We're reading I Met a Genius by Charles Bukowski. Probably like a very quick little analysis. Bukowski talks about things like editors as like bad. In one poem, it's called A Poem is a City, I think. He ends the poem talking about sending it off to an editor and that the editor is an executioner, a guillotine for his poem. Someone who will pick it apart, improve it, find meaning, publish it, give it a reason. And I think Bukowski is a big fan of not really having reason or justification. And just like letting things be. Well, imagine if that slid across your desk as an editor. Yeah, I can flip back to that page. Bukowski has a philosophy that he talks about, which we've seen in a couple of the poems. He talks about it in like interviews and stuff, and maybe some poems. But his big philosophy that you see, don't try, is what Bukowski says. If you have to force yourself to like something, if you have to force meaning, if you have to force yourself to do something, that is not good for you. Do it as natural. Do it comes automatically as a kid, right? That's what kids do. Yeah, he's not trying. Like, society tells us to like the sea, perhaps, that it's beautiful. And the kid is a genius in this philosophy. The kid is just there. The kids just be. They are free, they frolic, they do whatever they want, and they don't care. And they don't try. And kids don't try when they're playing. They're not trying to have fun, they're just having fun. Kids don't have to try to explore the world or speak their mind. They just, like, do it. And if we look at some of his other poems, Bukowski does talk about kids in this way in a few places. So this one, something for the touts, the nuns, the grocery clerks, and you. He says here at the bottom, good days too, of wine and shouting, fights in alleys, fat legs of women striving around, your bowels buried in moans, the signs in bull rings like diamonds hollering. Mother Capri, violets coming out of the ground, telling you to forget the dead armies and the loves that robbed you. Days when children say funny and brilliant things, like savages trying to send you a message through their bodies, while their bodies are still alive enough to transmit and run up and down without locks and paychecks and ideals and possessions and beetle-like opinions. Right? So maybe using the words of that poem, the adult is to see the sea as beautiful is a beetle-like opinion. It's like everyone else. It doesn't have freedom of thought and idea. It is just what's expected. But the child is able to, without even trying, say funny and brilliant things. Like, who knows, maybe he's speaking about that child itself, but also trying to send you a message through their bodies while their bodies are still alive enough. So Bukowski sees that maybe as starting very alive as a child and then becoming dumber and dumber, deader and deader. And to find a poem is the city. Now I stick this under glass for the gaunt, mad editor's scrutiny, and night is elsewhere, and faint grey ladies stand in line. Dog follows dog to estuary. The trumpets bring on gallows, as small men rant at things they cannot do. The editor ranting at writing he cannot write, bringing on the gallows to something he does not understand. So Bukowski does talk about this, being too discerning, too much overthinking, too much analysis, too much adultness, too much being grown up and serious and beetle-like and like the rest. Just makes you dull and like everyone else and pathetic. The child, though, the child is the genius. The child doesn't have to conform to any of this. I feel almost obligated, right, to keep this analysis short. Because the longer I spend talking about this poem, the more I tend toward being the editor. being so much further from a child, trying to put meaning into this. But like, I think it's that. Like, this is the first thing we thought of. The simplicity of the child, the fear of judgment, this stuff. And I think the poem, like, kind of speaks for itself. And I don't think we need to dig into whether the train itself is a symbol for something. You know, trains, they go forward, life, whatever. Aging, could be not, I don't care. And like, it's also, I think, just a beautiful poem. It's short, it speaks to so many of these ideas that Bukowski has talked maybe more at length in other poems in long-winded manners, but right here, this is 12, 13, like 14 lines or something. 13 lines. I met a genius on the train today. Plain language. About 6 years old, he sat beside me, and as the train ran down along the coast, we came to the ocean. And then he looked at me and said, "It's not pretty." It was the first time I'd realized that. And I'd also imagine maybe that anyone else, any one of these beetle-like people, would hear the kids say it's not pretty, and they say, what do you mean? The ocean is beautiful. The ocean is such a vast and mysterious and unknown and blue, beautiful thing. And they would, in that way, resist the child and continue in their ways and probably try to push the child to conform. Whereas Bukowski can sit there and recognize the poetry and the beauty of that and write a poem about it. And this is something I think is pretty important as a poet. Being able to find the poetry in things. Because, right, a lot of people just wouldn't find anything of value in that child's words. But the poet, the good poet, I think, looks at the world, looks at every single thing they see, and the poet finds the beauty in that. And so in a way, Bukowski practices the genius of the child by putting it on the page. And then he monetizes it so he can die with wealth. He was a poet who actually died rich for all his yammering on about his plight. To ruin the whole thing, to ruin my little monologue there. Bukowski takes this kid's thoughts and makes money off of it. But I mean, poet who died rich, yeah, Bukowski was worth a couple million when he died, I believe. Pretty crazy. Freaking white unicorn is what that is. Yeah. And of course it's the old alcoholic, angry at the world man. But his poetry is good. This is a good poem. I think that's I don't know. Any questions, any thoughts about this poem? Hello, High Caliber again. I don't know. Author Brian Liu, do you like the poem? High Caliber, you wanna write words that make you money? That's fair. You'll get there. You do. Beautiful. This lets me draw this out. Get more content out of it. All I am is a dirty capitalist who's trying to make money off of poetry. Like you said, he thinks kids are funny. Yes. I think Bukowski finds kids very funny, very whimsical, very free. You want to be an author, narrator, copywriter. Yeah, someone who makes money off of writing. Words. Someone who makes money off of words. No. You don't. But you said you want to be a money guy. What's the rest of the question, Brian Liu? You won't be making money. Okay. Yeah, that's probably a reasonable thing to expect. Okay. There's a question. You said, like I said, he thinks kids are funny. Well, no, I said, does anyone have questions? And you said, I do actually. You said, like you said, the kids are funny. He thinks kids are funny. And then maybe I've deluded myself into thinking there's more to that thought. If that was just a statement, then that's fine. I thought you were okay, you were agreeing with my observation. Yeah. And I think that makes more sense. Comedy, I think funny things, laughing, is probably something Bukowski values very highly, given a view like this. It is free to be funny and laugh and all of that, and just enjoy life. So, I guess rather than sitting here trying to analyze this poem more, just enjoy it. I met a genius. I met a genius on the train today, about 6 years old. He sat beside me, And as the train ran down along the coast, we came to the ocean. And then he looked at me and said, "It's not pretty." It was the first time I'd realized that. I Met a Genius by Charles Bukowski. That might be like the shortest analysis I've done, but I don't think I've had a more fitting poem for such a brief analysis.
Thanks for listening to me and my thoughts on Bukowski. Make sure to check out the rest of the series if you enjoyed, and follow or stop by Twitch if you want to see more. See you there.